So for the 1-1 to 1-3 quiz tomorrow, you're going to see, there's going to be 15 questions. You're going to see your unions, your intersections, your interval notation, writing interval notation as one single interval notation, and then your operations. First thing that from your review that we're going to start with is just telling whether or not the statement is true or false with those questions 1 through 10. You're not going to get these true-false questions tomorrow, but you will have to state a union or an intersection given a list of A is equal to whatever, B is equal to whatever, C is equal to whatever. So in this case for 1 through 10, your A is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. B is 2, 4, 6, 8. C is 5, 6, 7, 8. D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. For number 1, it tells you that A union B is equal to an empty set. A intersection B is equal to an empty set. If you remember with intersections, it's what's the same from both lists or both sets.
What's an empty set again?
An empty set means there's no numbers whatsoever. Okay, so in this case, that A intersection B means what's the same in both A and B. Well, in A, you have nothing that's the same in B. So that would be an empty set. So this would just mean that you have an empty set is equal to an empty set. And that's true. For number 2, you have A union C is equal to D. A union C. Unions means include everything in A and C. So if you include everything from A and C, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. That's not everything that's in D. So this is not true. This is false. So unions include everything. If there's something that's missing, then obviously it's false. Now tomorrow on your quiz, you're just focusing on unions and intersections. You're not going to see the members of or the subset of symbols. So with these, yes, they're good practice, but you're not going to see them on your quiz. So for 3, it tells you that 1 is a member of B. So that means that 1 is in the set for B. Is 1 one of the numbers in B? No, so that's false. For 4, it tells you that 6 is a member of B intersection C. First, find that B intersection C. What's the same from both B and C? 6 and 8. So is 6 a member of 6 and 8? Yeah, it's part of it, so that's true. For number 5, it tells you that 3 is a member of B union C. If you have B union C, that's everything from B as well as everything from C. Is 3 one of those numbers in either B or C? No. So what is that, true or false? False. For example, 6, we have A is equal to C. Is A identical to C? No, so that's false. For number 7, it tells us that B is a subset of D, which means everything from B is also in D. So start with the 2 in B. Is 2 also in D? Yes. Is 4 also in D? Yes. Is 6 in D? Yes. Is 8 in D? Yes. So this is true. For 8, we have D is a subset of A. So everything in D is also in A. Is that true? No. Is 2 in A? No. So that's false. With these subsets, I know they're not on your quiz tomorrow, but the way that you look at them is whatever comes first, everything from that set has to be part of the second one. So in this case, every single number that's in D has to also be in A in order for it to be true. For example, 9, it tells you that B is not a subset of C. So everything in B is not in C. Is that true or false? That's true. For 10, we have A intersection B with a union of C. A intersection B. Is there anything that's the same from A and B? No. So that's an empty set with a union of C. If we have an empty set, that means there's no numbers at all included with the numbers from C. What is no numbers at all included with the numbers in C? It's just C. So is this a true statement or a false statement? This one's true. So for 11 through 14, we're only going to be doing 12 and 14. The reason why is because I want to directly reflect what you're going to see tomorrow, and you're not graphing any of these tomorrow. You're just giving the statement in interval notation tomorrow. So with these, again, we're going to focus on 12 and 13 and 14. So you can skip 11 and 13. 12 says the real numbers between 4 and 8. If you were to give this an interval notation, you would want to write down your smallest number, which is 4, and your largest number, which is 8. With this, you're going to either put parentheses or brackets on them. Remember, the parentheses don't necessarily include that number, so it'll go up to that number, but it won't include that number. One of the words that you'll see here, if it does include that number, is the word inclusive. So instead, you would read the real numbers between 4 and 8, comma, inclusive, which means it would include both the 4 and the 8. If that's the case, then that's when you would give that bracket. But in this case, you don't see that word inclusive there, so you're just going to put parentheses on both of these. So, right, this one includes, or it doesn't include, but it's from 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's all of the numbers in between them also. Yeah, we're just writing these as interval notation. So we're just changing the statement that's in word form to interval notation. For 14, we have the real numbers less than or equal to 3. What's the lowest number that you can represent here? Infinity or negative infinity? Negative infinity, so that'll go down first. What's the highest number that you can represent here? 3. Your negative infinity and your positive infinity will always get a parentheses on it because we don't know exactly where that ends. So that negative infinity will start the parentheses. The 3, it says that it's equal to 3. So that one gets the bracket. For 15 and 16, we're writing each union or intersection of intervals as a single interval. So with these, it's probably best to write out exactly what's part of each of those sets. So for 15, it gives you the set of numbers between 2 and 5 with a union of the set of numbers between 3 and 8, including 8. So for these, what I would do, for the first one, I have between 2 and 5, I would go 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm doing a union with the numbers between 3 and 8, including 8. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. When I'm working with a union, you're including everything. So because you're including everything, you're going to take the smallest number and the largest number, write those down, and then use either the parentheses or the brackets that are on that number. So what's your smallest number out of both of these sets? 2. What's your largest number out of both of them? 8. What's on the 2 already? So it's going to stay the parentheses. What's on the 8 already? A bracket. So it's going to stay with the bracket on the 8. So you just have the parentheses, 2, 8, close brackets. For 16, we have the numbers between 1 and 6 with an intersection of the numbers between 4 and 9, including 4. So again, I would rewrite this using my numbers like I did with number 15. So the numbers between 1 and 6 are going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. With the intersection of the numbers between 4 and 9, including 4, is going to be a bracket on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 9 has a parenthesis, so it's going to stay a parenthesis so far. We're working with an intersection. This intersection means what's the same from both. So when you look at these, the only numbers that are the same from both are the 4, the 5, and the 6. So what's your smallest number that's included in both?
4,
What's your largest number that's included in both?
6,
Because you're working with an intersection, automatically it's including that number. So since it's including that number, both of these numbers are getting brackets on it.
because it's including them?
Yep. Because it's an intersection. Intersection means includes. What is included in both? So it's definitely equal to that number. For 17 through 28, we're just performing the indicated operation. So for 17, we have 1/8 minus 1/2. What's the first thing you need in order to add or subtract fractions? Your common denominator. Between the 8 and the 2, what is your least common denominator? 8. So since your least common denominator for this one is 8, we're going to do what to that 2 in order to turn it into an 8? Multiply it by 4. So we'll do the same thing with the number on the top. This is going to give us 1/8 minus 4/8. If you wanted to, you can also think about this as 1 plus -4 all over 8. The bigger number is the 4. The sign in front of it is negative, so you'll keep the sign, subtract the numbers. 4 minus 1 is what? So that's -3/8. Remember with the fractions, if you're adding or subtracting them, you keep the denominator. For 18, we have -5/6 plus 3/4. The -5/6 plus 3/4 does not have a common denominator. What is your least common denominator between the 6 and the 4? 12. So from here, what are we going to multiply the 6 by in order to make it 12?
2.
So we do the same with the -5. That gives us -10/12. For your second fraction, you have 3/4. 4 times what is 12? 3. So we multiply the 4 by 3. We multiply the 3 by 3. That's 9/12. You have -10 plus 9. The 10 is larger, so keep it negative. Subtract the two numbers. 10 minus 9 is 1, so that's -1/12. For number 19, we have -3/5 times -1/6. A negative times a negative is a what? Positive, so we can turn both of these into positives. If you wanted to simplify before you multiply, you can look at your numbers diagonally and see if those numbers that are diagonal from one another share a common factor other than 1. If you look at the 5 and the 1, do they share a common factor other than 1? No. However, the 3 and the 6, do the 3 and the 6 share a common factor other than 1? What? 3. So divide both the 3 and the 6 by 3. 3 divided by 3 is? 6 divided by 3 is? So really you're doing 1/5 times 1/2. This gives you what? Multiply straight across? 1/10. Good. For number 20, we have -2/3 divided by 8/9. When we divide fractions, what do? Keep, change, flip. So this becomes -2/3 times 9/8. Simplify before you multiply if you're comfortable with it. Look at your numbers diagonally. Between the -2 and the 8, do they share a common factor other than 1? What? What can you divide both the 2 and the 8 by? Other than 1? 2. So -2 divided by 2 is -1. 2 goes into 8 how many times? Between the 3 and the 9, what's your common factor other than 1? 3. So 3 divided by 3? 9 divided by 3? So this is the same thing as saying -1/1 times 3/4, which gives you what? -3/4. For 21, you have -19 plus 33. You can rewrite this as 33 minus 19. If you want to do that, there's nothing wrong with it. You kept the sign in front of the number with the number, and you just rewrote it. It's the same thing. So with this, if you write it vertically, you have the 33 over the 19. You cannot take 9 from 3, so that 3 is going to turn into what? Making the 3 to the left of it a 2. So 13 minus 9 gives us 4. And 2 minus 1 is? So that gives us 14 for our answer. For number 22, you have negative 6 minus negative 5. The two negatives next to each other are going to turn into what? Positives. So you're doing negative 6 plus 5, which is negative 1. Good. Remember with this, the bigger number is the 6, so the sign in front of it is negative. Keep the negative, subtract the numbers. That's where the negative 1 comes from. For 23, we have negative 12 times 3. A negative times a positive is a? Negative. And then 12 times 3 is? So that's negative 36. For 24, we have negative 15 divided by negative 3. A negative divided by a negative is what? Positive. How many times does 3 go into 15? 5. For 25, you have negative 12 plus negative 5. You have the same sign for both of these numbers and you're adding them. When that's the case, keep the sign, add the numbers. So if we keep the negative and add the 12 and the 5, what's that going to give us? Negative 17. Good. For 26, we have negative 60 minus 40. For this one, we can rewrite it as negative 60 plus negative 40. So it's just like the last one that we did where we have the same sign, so we keep the sign and add the numbers. If we keep the sign and add the numbers, what are we going to have for our answer? Negative 100. For 27, you have negative 11 times negative 6. A negative times a negative is a positive. What's 11 times 6? Good. For 28, we have 56 divided by negative 8. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. How many times does 8 go into 56? So that's negative 7.